All right, good afternoon. Welcome into the show. I haven't determined what I'm going to call the show yet. I'm debating upon that. But I was sitting around today and I thought there's some stuff that has come up that I want to get into the mix. And a lot of it has to do with some folks, I'm calling it an inadequacy syndrome. You know what I'm talking about, right? Guys that like go out and they buy these $150,000 trucks because they're compensating for something else, that kind of thing. You know what I'm talking about? That's kind of where the Big 12 is right now when they're looking at what the SEC and the Big 10 is. Okay. And the Big 12 is looking to add up to six Pac 12 schools because, of course, of Southern Cal and UCLA leaving the conference, of course, heading to they're going to head to the Big Ten. This is per Dennis Dodd of CBS Sports. So, with that, that move would bring the Big 12 up to 18 programs within the conference, which would make it the largest conference in the FBS. They are going for quantity over actual quality. Okay. So, some of the schools that are under consideration are now remember, everything goes back down to are we going to it's all a football move here. Remember, we talked about this on Friday. All of the revenue comes from football. All the other sports are great. I love college basketball. I love college baseball. But it comes back down to the almighty dollar. And the almighty dollar comes from your football program. And if you are in a conference and you're a commissioner and you don't understand that, which to be honest, I'm starting to worry a little bit about the Pac-12 to an extent and the ACC right now because if they have one set in their mind thinking, well, we're just going to be a basketball conference with North Carolina and Duke, and that's going to be enough to carry us as a conference, they're going to become extinct. They're going to become extinct, and that's just the way that it is. But we'll get into that momentarily. But here are the schools that are under consideration. Now, when you think of these schools, do you think football power? The schools are Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, Utah, as well as Oregon and Washington could also be in play for the Big 12 as well. Now, I mean, I could buy Washington to an extent because I mean, I think they have a national title in the past 30 years. Um, as far as expanding your brand with the Big 12, let me make sure that I completely understand where you're going here. You're going to lose Texas and Oklahoma, and you're going to replace it with, you know, a bunch of solid fives, basically, is what it boils down to. So, with that, I think it's a mess. Shout out to the folks over there watching online. Appreciate y'all as always. Jay, Jetmech, Andre, look at you, buddy. Appreciate you. Joey says, glad to see you still doing your thing. Yeah, man, I'm going to try to work on a little bit. Papa B, appreciate you. Dakota, yeah, thanks a lot for your stuff as well. All right, so when it comes back down to it, though, and I'm going to take your calls in a moment on this as I boot up the phone system here. Hold on, please. And I want to read Steven's comment because I think I kind of know where he's going. He says, I'm not loving all the changes and the general direction of college football. I think a few people with hastily made decisions could screw up a sport that's been around for over 100 years. Yeah. Well, and I mean, I hate to be the guy to say this, but the NIL portion of it actually ends up being kind of the Kickstarter for it. It's kind of the way that it boils back down to it. And once that went underway, then you had the whole thing with, you know, Oklahoma and Texas decide, you know what, I'm going to leave. And then the other shoe drops, which is what I called this show today. Anyway, so with that, we're going to take some calls here in a moment. And I want to get into that in just a second. But there's a couple of things I wanted to get into this first here. What about Notre Dame? If the ACC loses a football first member, what I mean by that is if it's Clemson, Miami, Florida State, you can somewhat put Virginia Tech into the mix. That could put Notre Dame into a situation where it could reduce the ACC down to a point where it's just not even viable anymore. They may look at it like the way that they viewed the Big East back in the day. So it could put them in a spot where the money portion of not joining the Big Ten could be too severe. Notre Dame makes less money as an independent than it would as a full-time ACC member. That means membership in the Big Ten could be huge, with school payouts approaching $100 million. Even though they have a lot of money at Notre Dame, it's still not, I mean, $100 million a season. Think about that. All right, so what's next for the Pac-12? The Pac-12 and the ACC, in my opinion, are on death watch. What I mean by that is that the Pac-12 more than the ACC right now, but the Pac-12 is sitting here. They lost two of their main folks. The Big 12 stepped up and got some folks to come to their conference, but the Pac-12 is on its swan song. Some of the things that they could do, they could take a close look at San Diego State. They could try to get back into Texas, going after Houston or SMU. But once again, do you think that that is going to go toe-to-toe with the Big Ten or the SEC with where they are right now? Jay says, add the Pac-12 adds the Mountain West. Look, I'm all about that. Boise State, the blue turf, and everything else. That's fine. But that's not going to go toe-to-toe with these two super conferences that we have out there. It's really not. All right, so I don't know what's going to happen there. They are definitely in the they're in the Undertaker's playing his music and he's walking to the ring, for you wrestling fans that are out there. Now, is the ACC in panic mode? In theory, I can tell you why they're not. And I know that people are going to get upset when I say that. This is not me being a guy that's carrying the ACC torch here, because I'm not. I'm carrying the attorney torch. You're asking, what is that? There's a thing called the grant of rights, which, if you've read about that, I've had some folks that have sent me direct messages on Twitter asking about the grant of rights with the ACC. If Clemson leaves the conference, I'm using Clemson because I live in South Carolina. Insert your favorite ACC team here, whatever team that you want. All right. We can all sit around and talk about, Clemson should be in the SEC, Clemson should be in the Big Ten, whatever. Okay. That's all stuff that we can throw like spaghetti on the wall and see what's going to stick. But the reality is, it comes down to this. The grant of rights, according to my research and stuff that I've found from several different spots online, including The Athletic, let's give them credit here on the program. It's an agreement where schools agree to transfer their media rights to a conference for a set period of time. That means their ability to be broadcast on a network. Okay. For an example, a Clemson agreement to be a part of an ACC grant of rights means that the rights fee for any televised sporting event from the Clemson campus is owned by the ACC until the grant expires. So basically, they have that grant of rights until 2036. That's 14 years from now. Think about that for a second. Now, they signed this all, back in 2000, 2004, something like that, when there was a lot of different things moving around. Oh, yeah, we want our TV rights, blah, blah, blah. Now it's going to bite them in the butt. Now, how does Clemson or insert your favorite ACC team get out of this? One option is try to negotiate a deal with the conference and the remaining members for an exit fee that is less than the full amount that would be forfeited. Okay, so basically, we're going to pay you in one lump sum. It's like Big Barney Ross, who always tells us about his divorces, how he had to pay so much money for that. It's kind of the same thing. It's a divorce from the conference where you pay an absurd amount of money up front, but you wipe the slate clean and you're able to walk away with your television rights, which, by the way, if you don't have them, regardless of what they say, other conferences don't want you. So, I mean, that's just the reality of it. Another option is hope that the league dissolves and the grant of rights dissolves with it. So, if you have a merger where the Big Ten decides to take on a good portion of the ACC, then that would void the contract and X or Y school could go to wherever it is that they wanted. So, here's the thing though. If that grant of rights remains ironclad, which most attorneys say, yeah, it's kind of hard to get out of, ACC schools may come to the table and say, you know what? All of this money that the conference is making because of football is because of what we're doing. What Clemson, Miami, Florida State, some people try to say NC State, but okay. I'm talking about the schools that take football seriously. All right. Not the Dukes of the world where you have to walk across the street to go to the locker room in the middle of a game. Not that kind of school. Not Boston College where they have 30,000 fans in the stands and they're all waiting on tickets to go see the Red Sox. I'm talking about the absolute schools that football is a big deal to them. Their administrators may want uneven revenue. So if you do well and let's say that you go to the college football playoff or you win the conference championship, you get a bigger share of the revenue that would go towards the rights for everyone else. Okay, because that's something that may end up happening there. Basically, the Vanderbilts of the world, where we don't know how much money they're spending, but it's not exactly the same amount that Alabama, Georgia, et cetera, is spending in the SEC, but they still get that Alabama, Georgia revenue check. And that's the way that it's going to come down with stuff like that for the ACC. Now, I said the other day, even if it ties up your TV rights, I would get my best attorneys if I were Clemson, and I know that that's going to cost a lot of money, but for 14 years, that's where the grant of rights stuff is right now. And for 14 years, they're going to have rights to everything that you've got. And with the moves that the SEC and the Big Ten have already made, in addition to the moves that the Pac-12 have made, the Big 12 has made, you've got your two conferences right now that are the ACC and the Pac-12 that are just basically looking around as it's sort of like what's the best way to look at it? Let's say that you're the little brother and you got your big brothers, you're trying to play basketball, but you never get to grow. In the end, it's going to come back to bite you on the financial front where you're not going to have money for facilities and everything else. And it's going to water down the competition in your league as well. There's also rumors out there that the ACC could add some other teams, and that may be coming down the pipe. Who knows? Who knows? We shall see on that. But adding the only one that really can make the conference any better is Notre Dame. After that, I mean, you're kind of grabbing at straws. All right, so comments over here. We'll get to those in a moment. If you want to support the show, there's the PayPal link, the Cash App link, and the Venmo link right there. Would appreciate anyone if you enjoy the show a little bit, send some stuff that way. Also, don't forget tomorrow night, new Rob and Kale show. We'll have some good stuff for you there. But some of the comments that are over here. Pagan Megan says, if you lose the Danny Cannell, will you lose the Danny Cannell bit? I don't have, that's not a bit. I mean, facts hurt feelings over there. If you get smacked around in the SEC easy, why don't you just sit back there for a second, sir, and you tell me who in the SEC East right now is better than Clemson? I'll wait. It's Georgia, and that's it. Clemson gets jacked for one game a year, and that's with the Georgia Bulldogs. The rest of those teams over there are a bunch of bitches. You know that as well as I do. Big Barney Ross says, Mike and Leach, thank you for the super chat. Needs to be in charge of everything on the restructuring the conferences and divisions, like Pod, the SEC, the ACC, and the whole ball of wax. Stop it, Peg and Megan. Stop it. Can't walk around with your mouth talking about Kentucky. Get out of here. It's Georgia, and that's it. No one else has that, man. All right, 803-470-2905. Let's see here. As I put the phone number out there. You want to call the show and sound off a little bit? We'll have some time for that. 803-470-2905. 803-470-2905. Big Barney Ross says Tennessee. Okay. I mean, man, you SEC folks are just outstanding. Frothy Tavern is correct. Clemson doesn't want to get left behind by taking no actions. There are 3 athletic are literally, it's sort of like I'll give you an old Rob story here. So back when my wife and I first started dating, this is actually funny. We decide we're going to go play golf. This is like one of our first dates. So we get out there and we're hitting the golf ball, and some jerk behind us hits a ball into us. Now, of course, this pisses the wife off. The wife wants to hit the ball back into them. Now, I don't know my wife that well, okay? But I do know, being the guy that I am, that if these 2 big behemoth motherfuckers come up behind us and they're gonna threaten her, I gotta defend her. So it's like, I don't really know you that well, but I gotta be the guy and defend you here if you wanna lose your gizzards and hit a golf ball back into some guys because they were rude and hit a golf ball into us. That's kind of where the ACC is right now with 3 athletic directors, Clemson, Florida State, and Notre Dame. They're all looking at the president up there, or the head of the commissioner of the conference, and they're saying, look, what are you going to do? Look what these guys did over here. What are you going to do? It's the same theory, and it's a mess. 803-470-2905. Jay says that the gimmick is better than Clemson. Okay. Aaron says he wants Clemson to play Tennessee so bad. The last time Clemson played Tennessee, Clemson beat that ass. You don't want any of that. It's not a road you want to go down. Stephen A says off last year only Georgia, but Tennessee, Florida, Kentucky, South Carolina, and I'd argue even. Oh my God, Stephen A, don't drink during the middle of the day, man. Let's see here. Dakota says that's why I want Clemson in the SEC so bad, and so Tennessee's another can play them a lot more. And I agree with that to an extent. Getting back to what Peg and Megan said earlier, as far as Clemson goes, where would I rather them go? I think that the better move for Clemson would be to go into the SEC, but I think that the Big Ten's probably going to make the move for them because the SEC already has someone in the state of South Carolina. So there's that. I think that the Big Ten would like to move a little further into a southern market. I think that screws the fans over, by the way, because if you're a Clemson fan, you could go up and down the seacoast here or up and down the Atlantic coast and play a lot of, you go to Florida State, whatever. The road trips will be a lot different. I mean, how is Clemson going to do going to insert cold ass state here in freaking November? Because that's going to happen. Peg and Megan says, all kidding aside, wouldn't your schedule be so much more exciting? I mean, it would be because, and I'll give you this, replacing having to play teams like, I mean, we can insert several teams into the mix here. Duke, Virginia. I mean, replacing them with some of the SEC teams would be great. I mean, I think as for a fan, any fan would want to do that. I mean, we goof about it, but hey, I'd much rather have a Saturday knowing that Clemson will be squaring off with the guys down in Gainesville over playing the guys at Duke. I mean, it's just common sense, in my opinion, anyway. All right, 803 470 2905, 803 470 2905. Kirby's Visor wants money to pay for the 4th of July barbecue. Oh, goodness. Those can get expensive. All right, 803 470 2905. Papa B says, what teams do we look back at in 10 years and say, man, conference expansion really hurt them bad? The have-nots are already there. I mean, it's gonna. I do think if you're not, and maybe the Big 12 is trying to say we're gonna have 3 major conferences now instead of 2. If you're not in those 3 major conferences, the idea of being able to recruit at a high level is in the trash. So whoever's not in those 3 conferences is gonna go down the hill. Big Barney Ross with another super chat. Thank you, sir. He says Louisville Cardinals in the ACC. Louisville Cardinals, that awkward moment when you're wearing Nikes, but you still can't do it. Yeah. Funny. Baylor man with a good point. 247 Sports ranks Shane Beamer number 11 in the SEC coaching rankings. Yeah, that's, I think a lot of, there's a lot of people that look at Shane Beamer and say, okay, he's too young. And yeah, last season, you're starting to hear the F word a little bit with some folks. Last season was a fluke, and look at all the teams that ended up being dumpster fires. Um, I think that's overloaded in my opinion. Shane Beamer won 7 games last season without a quarterback. Think about that for a second. Won 7 games without a quarterback. Didn't really have a running back that was really over the top great. And they were running trick plays with defensive linemen. So Shane Beamer was still able to get 7 wins in his first season. Peg and Megan says Jackpot hates the word fluke. That's because I've used it with him so much, especially the Will Muschamp year where Muschamp won 9 games, biggest fluke in college football history. Absolute fluke. Go back and look at it now. I know Gamecock fans get pissed about it. It's okay though. Will Muschamp is gone. All right. The reality is that was a fluke season. It really, really was. 803 470 2905. 803 470 2905. South Carolina's ceiling is finishing second in the East this season. Yeah. I mean, for that to happen there, Kirby's Visor, they're going to have to beat Tennessee, which they get them at home this year. And they're going to have to hold serve. They're going to have to break the losing streak, in my opinion, to Mizzou. Keep winning over Vanderbilt. But that Tennessee game at home is a big, big game. And they got to figure that out. So yeah, there's that in the mix. Let's see here. What else? Andre says I can't see South Carolina finishing second. Well, we'll see. Aaron's got a good point there. Beamer's the third oldest coach in the East. Heupel, Napier, Drinkowitz, and Lee are all younger. Yeah. Rob with a good point. ACC better start getting some guys from the AAC, but they're too prideful. East Carolina and UCF would fit in. Someone needs to get UCF. I'm with you on that. As far as East Carolina goes, it won't happen simply because, and this has nothing to do with the Pirates, but there is a lot of sticks up asses on Tobacco Road with North Carolina and with Duke, and even some of the folks in Wake Forest that they don't want to be associated with East Carolina. They just think that, oh, they're beneath us, the wine and cheese crowd. You know what I'm talking about. But Rah is correct on that. The ACC is in my opinion, they are they're like a boat that's sinking a little bit here. If they don't start making a move to solidify that conference, they're going to be in trouble. 803-470-2905. 803-470-2905. If you want to call and join the program today. I've got one other thing that I wanted to throw out here before we get out of here today. The college football, the new the Power Football Index, FPI, was updated today. And I was looking at some of this stuff, and we were talking about South Carolina to an extent. I felt a few minutes ago. Did you know that right now in the new FPI, the Florida Gators are ranked higher than South Carolina? They've got the Gators with an 88% chance, an 83% chance to win 6 games or more. South Carolina, though, is ranked 45th, and they have them at a 61% chance to win 6 games or more. Now, I know that the FPI is a computer-based thing, but when you see stuff like that, makes you think there might be something that's out there that I'm not saying there's a bias towards South Carolina, but as far as where the programs are now, South Carolina right now is a little bit better program than Florida is. Pagan Megan says, "We want the taters." Of course you do. Daddy-O says, "Notre Dame's decision will either make or break the ACC." Well, we'll see on that. If I'm Notre Dame too, as I said, I'm looking around. I'm trying to figure out, hey, this is where these are the teams that you're talking about bringing in here. Okay. Papa B says, "Who has more room for growth, Liberty and App State, or ECU and UCF?" In my opinion, with just enrollment and the fact that they are in Florida, UCF makes the most sense. I like App State. I think App State's great, but all of those schools on the football front, they're kind of I guess UCF's the best. But then again, we're talking like grand on the other side of the world type things here, where adding this team to this conference and that team to that conference. I think eventually we'll put this out there on July 5th, which we're 2-3 weeks away from what are we? I think ACC kickoff is the 21st. I'll be in Charlotte for that. But I think that so we're like 16 days away. The big thing with that is that right now, if you had to pull me down and tell me who I think is going to leave, I think that the money aspect in the end is gonna be too much for Clemson to not say, "You know what? I gotta move on." Same thing with Florida State, and I don't know about Miami. I mean, I think they care about football down there, but not to the extent that is at Clemson and Florida State. Whereas I think those 2 schools would be the first to jump out and say, "You know what? we're willing to challenge this grant of rights thing in court. We're willing to put the money together to get the attorneys to do that because in the end, it may cost us a good bit of money now, but it's going to cost us a lot more if we don't later on. But I stand by what I said Friday on the show. Clemson needs to be making a move now, or they need to be pressuring the ACC to do something because you're literally sitting back. And even the Pac 12 today, they put out, look, we're trying to get a new TV rights deal now because their new rights deal expires in 2024. They're trying to get a new rights deal right now. So, with that, I think that in the end, the ACC is just kind of just sitting there, just looking around like, what are we going to do? And in the end, they're going to end up with egg on their face. All right, 803-470-2905. If you'd like to support the show, there's the PayPal link, Cash App, and the Venmo link. Appreciate the super chats today. One other note here. Big Barney Ross says Lane Kiffin wears a onesie. That's kind of funny. Rah-Rah's correct. The ACC's worried about basketball, but in the end, that doesn't matter. We talked about that. In the end, because I've got the notes right here. Remember this from the other day. College football on average brings in about $31 million a year for schools. College basketball brings in $8 million a year, and hockey's the third biggest revenue generator, $2.5 million per school. So it all comes back down to football, ladies and gentlemen. It's just the way that it is. One other note here. Imagine this. If things just stayed the way they are right now, we didn't make any changes. Everybody's all right. We're just going to stick with what we got. In a couple of years from now, Rutgers, Rutgers, Tony Soprano's school, will be getting more than twice as much money from its conference than Clemson, Miami, and Florida State will get. I think that's all you need to know, right? Something is going to change because athletic directors and attorneys and all of that are going to look at that number and realize that's not going to work. A school in New Jersey is going to get more money than we're getting down here, and we actually care about football. So I leave you with that today. That's kind of the one of the crazy, things that could end up biting you in the butt. Final comments over here. Let's see here. Andre says the ACC has been over by Notre Dame. ACC should have fired the commission the same day his Big Ten Alliance went behind his back and got Southern Cal and UCLA. Miami's a weird market. Yeah, Jay, Rutgers is in the Big Ten, and they will get a bigger payout as far as from the conference than Clemson and Florida State will if they stay in the ACC. So there's that. Miami with an SEC budget would prosper. Well, I think it's not the same Miami that it used to be. Back in the day when, there would be shots fired at practice and players will return fire. Yeah, that's kind of, it's not the same Miami. Okay. So there you go with that. But I don't know how that's going to work out, but something is going to change. Something is absolutely going to change. A couple other notes here from the FPI I thought were interesting. As far as projected chance to win out, which means have a winning regular season, or win out the complete regular season, Ohio State is at 32%. The Georgia Bulldogs are at 20%. Alabama's at 16%. Clemson's at 13%. Notre Dame's at 1%. I thought that was interesting too. And Michigan's at 1.7%. The more and more I look at this FPI, some of it makes sense. But I think the preseason numbers are just there to drive folks to come to it. During the season, I think it's a viable tool because you can look at it and say, you know what? The percentage index they have is pretty good. X team has a 68% chance to beat Y team. Those are great. Andre says, Bama at 16, who do they think will beat them? Well, I mean, they haven't put those out yet. But, I mean, Alabama's got, and let's not laugh at this, but their schedule has Texas on it. It's got LSU, Mississippi State, Texas A&M. I mean, insert teams here. Kirby's Visor says, how do you not have a stadium on campus? Well, there's not much land down there. That's why. So, yeah. Miami fans are more delusional than ever. Thank you for that, Captain Trips. Kirby's Visor says, Ole Miss could upset Bama, Arkansas, or Aggies again, even. I think Alabama is going to be absurdly strong, but in the end, would anybody be shocked if Alabama lost one of those games? Think about it. We shall see on that front. I don't think Calzada's at A&M anymore, is he? Zach Calzada is not even at A&M anymore. Calzada transferred. Hold on. Somebody help me with that over there in the chat room. Zach Calzada transferred. Yeah. Where did he go? Yeah, he's at Auburn. Yeah, so he's not at A&M anymore. He's at Auburn now. So maybe that's what you're thinking there, Papa B. But yeah. Man, you remember watching Calzada last year? He looked like he needed to hit the training table a little bit. I mean, he looked like he was just a little light. I thought that Will Anderson was going to kill him. I really did. So there's that. All right, final call for calls, 803-470-2905, 803-470-2905. Big Barney Ross with a valid comment here. If the ACC and SEC came together under one merger to form a super conference and kept all their member institutions, we'll be talking about a league with 30 teams and Missouri still sucks. Megan says Auburn is the worst team in the West. Wow. I mean, you know, I wish that I could argue with him, but that's kind of hard. That's kind of hard. By the way, hold on. I was actually I looked this up the other day. Speaking of which, we're talking about Mizzou and Big Barney Ross saying Mizzou being the worst in the conference. Since they joined the league in 2012, they've won 38 conference games. Think about that for a second. In that same period of time, Tennessee has 29 conference wins, Kentucky has 29 conference wins, South Carolina has 36 conference wins, Vanderbilt has 19 conference wins. Let's go out to the phones. Hold on. Welcome into the program. Good afternoon.
Hey, how you doing?
Hi.
Good. I figured I would call in because I actually agree with you about something.
Okay, what's that?
And that's just strange.
I know, right?
Yeah, about the FPI. Every week that goes by, you know what it's like? It's like the old BCS system. This would be like the BCS computers trying to put out a poll in July.
Yeah.
You know, but the longer the season goes on, the better the FBI gets. But it's ridiculous. The FBI preseason stuff is ridiculous. But like you said, by the end of the year, I mean, they have what's their prediction record on their percentages? I mean, it's something like 95%.
After
you know
October the 15th, it's in the 90 percentile range. I mean, it's pretty good.
Yeah, because that thing is run by computer simulations, and So they enter a bunch of data into a computer and then they run 10,000 game simulations and that's what they get. So the more time goes by in a season, the more accurate data they have to feed those computers, the more accurate result it's likely to spit out. But like last year, they had Mississippi State at number 8
Right.
in the preseason. I think they won 6 games. Um,
Yeah. I
there's
mean,
some
I think
other
that,
weird stuff in this one too. Texas is in the top 10 of this one.
yeah.
Uh, that's some other weird stuff. Anyway, keep up the good work.
Appreciate it, man. You have a great day.
You too, buddy.
Uh, Interesting stuff there from Uncle Lou. He agrees with me on something. Imagine that. Anyway, so getting back to my thing on Mizzou here is kind of interesting. As I said, they've won 38 conference games since 2012. On the West side, 35 for Ole Miss, 38. Excuse me, it's 35 for Mississippi State. Excuse me, 35 for Ole Miss, 38 for Mississippi State. One way or the other. I may have written that down wrong. Arkansas has 20 wins. They have 20 conference wins since 2012 when Mizzou joined the SEC. So for the folks that want to say, Mizzou just doesn't belong, well, you can't have your cake and eat it too. What I mean by that is if you're going to come to me and tell me the SEC is like one of the best conferences ever, and they've got the toughest conference, oh wow, all this great, it's the greatest conference of all time. Yeah, in the SEC East, there are two teams that have more conference wins since 2012 than Missouri, and that's Florida and Georgia. I mean, I know those numbers, people don't like those numbers, but that's just the way that it is. Now, you could go the other route and you could say to me, you know what, Rob? When I look at what you just told me, man, Mizzou does play in the SEC easy. Yeah, they do. But when you look at the other side of it, who they've got, they get Vanderbilt every year, who has 19 conference wins since they joined the conference. You've also got Arkansas, which is their permanent rival in the SEC West, who only has 20 conference games that they've won since 2012. Think about that for a second. Oh, and we can throw Kentucky in there too, because they just started caring about football in the past 3 or 4 seasons. Red online, Clemson, Miami, FSU, UGA, Alabama, South Carolina. He just lists a whole bunch of teams. I don't know what you're talking about there, Red. Good point there. All right. Appreciate you guys checking out the show today. Mizzou beat you with boredom. Well, that could be correct, but if you're going to hold that conference thing up there, I mean, it's kind of hard when they won more games than everybody in the East except for Florida and Georgia. Sorry, just the way that it is. Kirby's advisor says Kentucky just became a football school. Yeah. Big Barney Ross says that's why the SEC is only going to be interested in a handful of programs, namely Clemson, Florida State, and possibly Miami if we're talking about expansion into the ACC. I think that the SEC is, if they're going to make more moves, I don't know if we're going to hear anything about it for this. We may, who knows? All of the cards right now are shifted to the ACC, though, and I'll stand by that. The ACC, what are they going to do? Literally. It's kind of the way it works right now because everybody else has made their moves. And now you're just sitting here kind of holding the bag and you're just saying, oh, well, let's just talk about Clemson. Let's just talk about Clemson and what they're doing. Yeah, I don't know. All right, there you go. If you want to support the show, there's the PayPal, the Cash App, and the Venmo. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for the super chat. And don't forget, new Rob and Kale show tomorrow night. Steven's got a good point. Chase Daniel, Drew Lock, Blaine Gabbert, some decent quarterbacks played for Mizzou. That's true. That's absolutely true. You could also, if you're a Mizzou fan, say, you know what? The year of South Carolina's best team, in my opinion, was the year that Mizzou won the SEC East. They went on to get popped, but they still won the division. Got 2 division titles. Look at me trying to sound like a Mizzou fan when I don't really give a shit either way. All right, guys, appreciate you checking out the show. We'll talk with you later on.